Hey guys, a warm welcome back to the channel. Today we are going old school. We're back to basics, doing a big job right here on the driveway with just some basic tools. We're going to be doing the full clutch on this car. It hasn't been on the road for a year and well, I miss it. It needs to be on the road. So we're going to be doing everything that needs to be done to start getting this back on the road where it belongs and making some noises like this. Now, as I said, we're going to be doing the full clutch on this car. I'm going to show you how to do it step by step, basic tools on a driveway. No fancy stuff here. Now, on a 360, especially in F1, the clutch can last as little as 8,000 miles. That's if you're using it around town, just pootling around. It can go up to about 25,000 if you're doing motorway, freeway, long distance journeys. Maybe a little bit more if you've got a manual car. However, this car here that I've owned for 12 years has exceeded the rule book. It's done about 3 times that. It's done about 60,000 miles since I've owned it, and I can't see anything in the history before that to say it had a clutch. Potentially this is its original clutch. Now that is absolutely unheard of, and I can tell you this, I do not pamper this car, you can tell by the look of it, and I certainly don't let it come out of the garage, warm up for 5 minutes. My neighbours complain at anything louder than a mouse squeak, so it's impossible to actually really do that kind of thing. So it gets out, it gets driven, and it gets driven hard, and it gets driven mostly in race sport mode. So I don't know what's going on with this one. Anyway, not only that, we have hooked up with my guys Super Performance, who provide probably the cheapest Ferrari parts in the world anyway. We've got an amazing deal. For the next month till the end of August, all the shipping on Ferrari parts will be free of charge worldwide. There are going to be a few T's and C's, check those out in the description below. But otherwise, guys, get those parts ordered up, get those clutch kits changed, get those other bits you need for Ferraris, and get them with free shipping. Anyway, let's go and have a look at all the parts we need for this job. So let's quickly run through all the parts that I'm going to be using today. Now, the 360 has not had a clutch in the 12 years that I've owned it, and like I say, for the most part that was daily driven, so it is getting the full shebang, the royal treatment today. We've got Flywheel, we've got the clutch here as well, that's the clutch. We've got the flange, we've got the bearing here, so our slave cylinder, that's all got all the seals in it already. We've got the sensor as well, extremely expensive from Ferrari, unfortunately, but it is, while we're in there, we're going to just be giving this a complete refresh. We've got the ring gear here, we have got a few other bits and bobs that we're going to be changing, little stuff here, seals, we've got rear main seal there, bearing, we got the flywheel bolts, we got a couple of special tools here. This one is for removing some of the bolts that are kind of angled behind. This is our clutch alignment as well. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the description below all of the parts that I use. Now I'm probably going to be ordering a couple of other little bits. There might be some O-rings while we get in there. Now the final bit of kit you're going to need is one of these if you've got an F1 car, because you're going to need to program the clutch parameters. Now this is hands down the best bit of money I've ever spent on my modern Ferraris. It saved me an absolute fortune. Having a modern Ferrari, you basically cannot self-do DIY stuff on it really without one of these nowadays. This has saved me an absolute fortune on things like my F1 gearbox problems. Anyway, this one comes and it works on not just Ferrari, pretty much everything. Aston Martin, Lamborghini, Maserati, Land Rover, American cars, Asian cars, Citroen, European cars. Anyway, we go into here. This one allows me to do many things almost as good as the Ferrari diagnostic computer itself. If you guys want one of these, I'm going to put details below. Just ping me a message and I'll tell you where you can buy one. Now I'm going to start by removing various parts on the back of the car, so rear bumper, under trays and things like that. Now I've done it in previous videos, it's all been documented before, it's very easy to do, so I'm not going to go through it all on this video. You can get to see it all in time lapse. The other tool I totally recommend you should equip yourself with at this point is a copy of the workshop manual. It has things like the torque specs, step by step how to take things apart if you're not sure, and it's really well documented. Now I'm going to put a link in the description below. If you use my link, you can download all kinds of shop manuals and you're going to get 15% off. As you can see, that is my Super Performance delivery. I ordered that yesterday and it's already arrived, and it is midday the following day, so super top job from these guys. This is for the 308. Hopefully this is going to fix the 308. The next thing I'm going to do before I start is I'm going to go into my computer. So what we need to do is then plug our little dongle into the OBD socket, which is down underneath the steering column here on the 360. That fits in there, and you just hear that beep. It's just up under there, and then it will communicate with the car. So we're going to take some readings from this currently before we do any work to the clutch. It's going to connect to the dongle, which you're going to put under there. I'm going to fire all that up, and then I'm going to get my settings. Now for this I found the 430 communicates a little bit better, and I'm going to use this. This is the gearbox, so CFC 231, and I'll show you on my TCU why I use that. So this is my TCU. It sits down here behind the driver's seat, or if your steering wheel's on that side, behind your passenger seat in this little compartment down here. That's my TCU. This is a spare Challenge Ferrari one that I happen to have, and as you see in the little lower left hand corner down there, CFC 231. So this is the Challenge Ferrari version. Now ideally with the computer, what you're going to need is to see something that is a newer version. The early versions of the 360 TCU don't communicate very well with that computer. Now you can upgrade these things. Obviously this car has been upgraded. You can put much newer versions in, but you just need to configure them all up. Anyway, that is why I use 231. And then I'm going to read some data. Now I've got special functions on here which I'm going to use later on. So things like bleed, self-learning. The PIS setting is the major one that we need. So currently, let's have a quick look at this. So let's read the value. 4.22. Okay, so PIS currently on my used one. I'll make a little note on it, and later on when we put the new one in, this allows me to write the fresh data on it. So clutch wear, I don't think it, there you go. Let's just make a note of these as well. So these settings here I would ignore, because I was messing around a few months ago when I was checking some of the stuff that I needed to do for this. So then we've got things like the reset of the wear index. This is what we're going to be doing when we put the new clutch in. So we've got everything in here that we need to do. I'll just show you some of the other stuff. So we can select gears, for example. Go here. If you watch up here, 5th gear. All kinds of things like that. Let's go neutral, and then what we are going to do here, and special functions on this, what we can do is things like the clutch bleed. We're going to be doing that as well. Next thing I'm going to do, which I probably should have done at the start, is just unscrew the filler cap there for the transmission gearbox. We're going to have to drain all the oil out of this one, and it's always good to start by making sure you can refill it to start with. Now if you guys want to know how to do all the oil fill and the servicing and the oil change on these things, put a link to that video up there somewhere. So we're going to loosen this off, and it sounds horrendous normally when it goes. There you go. Feels like it's actually snapped the casing, but no, that's okay. Right, so we're good, that's loose. We can refill it once I get this thing all done. Next job is I'm going to remove the F1 actuator from the side of the gearbox transmission. There's a load of 7mm little nuts around there that hold it in place. So what we're going to do is keep that complete and just move it to one side. That means all of the lines are still attached, everything is there, it's just disconnected from these two plugs up here. So there's two nuts here, one there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 around here. So 8 in total, all 7mm, and all have a little washer on them as well. So it's good practice to have one of these little telescopic, very cheap magnets. There we go. We're just going to put that down there for now. So we're going to start by draining the transmission fluid. Now the drain plug for this is right at the back here, just there. It is not that one, that is the motor oil. We're doing that one next. Anyway, you have the link to my video of how to do this. I'm just going to crack on with it and empty all the fluids. Here we go. Lovely. Okay, so that's the last few drops of transmission gearbox oil coming out now. So I'm going to switch over and drain the engine oil, and then we are good to pull the transmission. Okay, so we're onto the engine oil. Place your bets now. Is this going to go everywhere, or I'm going to do a clean extraction? Here we go. Oh yeah, who's the pro? Now don't forget, there is 2 drain points for the engine on a Ferrari 360. The other one is right there at the front of the block, just at an angle. That one right there. This is normally one. I've got to look at that, I've got a bit of breeze as well. So, oh, here we go. Yeah. Lovely. Okay, while that's happening, I'm just going to disconnect these 2 lines here. Okay, so while that is just finally draining the last fluids, we're going to take all of the bolts off that hold the gearbox transmission to the engine. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 2 at the bottom, so 8 in total. And they are just 17mm bolts. There's one here, as you can see. So we're just going to go around and systematically get those off. One more little bracket to remove. That is just this little bit here, so I'm just going to remove the front one. I don't think it makes any difference if you do the front and back. I'm going to remove that. Now our transmission, our gearbox is ready to come out the back of the car, and well, there's various ways of doing this. They are extremely heavy. You can just about lift them on your own. Ideally in this situation I would have 2 people, myself and somebody helping me. There's space in the engine bay as well, so you can actually stand in there, so it's quite a bit of room around here. However, I'm showing the extreme way of doing this. One-man band, little me, Mr. Ratarossa. So I'm going to figure this one out. I'll just show you though, you can actually move this thing, look. It's not as bad as it looks. I've got a crane. I've also potentially could drop this one down, put it on an engine trolley, and then we'll just see if we can get it out. But I haven't removed this kind of oil filler bit here. It sits up quite proud. So we're gonna have to remove or maneuver that around underneath through this gap here somehow. Anyway, let's figure it out. So as you can see, the gearbox is right back at the moment. So in theory, I could actually do the job like this. There's plenty of space here to change everything, and there's enough space to get in down here. However, to film this for you guys, ideally, I need a lot more space. Okay, so we have the gearbox, the transmission off the car. It's in the garage because it's due to rain soon. Typical English weather. Looks fine at the moment, but who knows. Anyway, we'll leave that side for the time being. We're going to focus on this. So let's have a little walk around it and I'll explain a few things. So the actual gearbox itself is exactly the same between a 360 manual and an F1 system. The difference being is some of these things, we've got a sensor here, and on the side where our F1, which is down there at the bottom, all of our F1 actuator sits and bolts into here. Normally what you would have is a little kind of mechanism here, and that's where your cables come through, and that is where your shifter comes into the car. So it just sits on there in place of that, the F1 actuator. So the rest of it is more or less the same. You've then got this little bleed, this block here for the F1, which feeds through. So this is our hydraulic line. Comes down, got a little bleed nipple there. We've done a video on that, replacing that, because that is a common problem on 360s. They develop hairline cracks, the factory ones. Comes through into here, we've got a sensor, and then we've got our throwout bearing here. As you can hear, mine doesn't sound too healthy. Let's have a little close inspection. You can see it's definitely seen better days. And then we've got all the mechanism, and we've actually got the flange that sits behind it. So we've got a couple of bolts there. You need a special tool, which is this one here. It's got an angle in it which allows you to get in and behind to undo those. So we're going to start taking all of this off. I'm going to clean up. I've got a sensor, so we've got the new sensor here. We've got the new bearing. We've got the flange that it sits on. We've got a couple of new bolts. And I think there's a couple of O-rings that we're also going to have to source behind there that aren't normally recommended or not normally changed as part of this, but I'm going to change everything while we're in here. Like I say, this clutch has done probably 3 times more than any normal one, so it deserves the very best today. So here is our new throwout bearing, and as you can see, that is smooth and beautiful, and it's actually an aftermarket, but it's an upgraded one compared to factory. So we've got the upgraded throwout bearing, and also we have an upgraded flange that goes with that. I think you need to use that if you're going to put one of these on there. So actually that's cheaper than the factory one, so that's a nice thing. A better, well-made bearing, and it's cheaper, so that's great. Can't ask for more. Let's see if I can show you this working. So you will hear on the other end of this line, in fact you might even see it if I put that there. Watch this, if we've got any fluid in it, it will shoot out. Ready? I don't want to hold that bearing, that sensor. There you go. But that feels, this here feels very notchy. Look at that, really notchy right there at the end. Anyway, and the reason you need one of these is because of the angle behind it. We need to get to this bolt here, and there's one on the opposite side down here, which is a little bit easier. Now we're just going to be really careful with our sensor here. Now this is our very expensive sensor. There we go. And then we've got a magnet here. This is our pin. close look at that, shall we? Okay, so let's see if I can show you how this works. So this is our very expensive sensor, okay, and it sits on this other half of the housing, and then you've got this bit here. So it's just a magnetic sensor to sense exactly which position it's in. Now mine is really gummed up, and what you have to do here is there's a slight pin at the base right down there. I need to drive that pin out, and then we move this part here, and then I need to transfer that onto the new one. And as you can see just on the side down there, that's where our pin goes. So I'm going to need 2 hands to do that, but as you can see, this is my bearing. Now I don't want to break any of that because that's all got to be transferred over. And that there has got a bit of wear on it, definitely in that midsection. Nothing too bad, but we're going to change it anyway. So the flange is ready to come off. Now I've got to admit, this was a little bit of a problem, and there's also a little spacer there, so don't lose that. It's got to go on a new one. Now there was a slight problem with mine. It looked like they'd used some kind of thread lock in here, so I think it was somehow sticking and holding the flange in a little bit. So I used a bearing puller, which we're going to be using a little later on, put it into one of these holes here and just gave it a tiny little tug, and then that was it. It just all popped out, no problem at all. So that's ready to go on. We've got one more job to do here though. So on our throwout bearing, we've got to change over this little bit here. It's got a tiny little pin through it, so we've got to knock that out. But first of all, the other thing that I hadn't even noticed until I looked at the parts last night was our replacement sensor here. If you look at the sensor, that actually comes with a replacement magnet. So the magnet, let's put that over there safely, sits inside here. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove the old one, and since we have a new one, we're going to put it in. So I'm just going to do that now, and then we'll change the thing over. So I think keeping it steady like this is going to give you the best chance of getting that screw out. Okay, so we've got it set up on the new one here. Pin is in. Just got to knock it in very carefully. This side is ready to reassemble now. We have the bearing all set up with the little magnet in there. With the flange, we have a little spacer there, but behind the flange there's 2 little O-rings down here, which are the end of the kind of channel from these 2 lines from our clutch little block here that feed through, come through here, and end up here. And I'm gonna not take any risks. I'm gonna replace those, but I don't have them. It doesn't say anywhere to replace those as part of the kit. They're like a few pence, so I'm gonna pick a couple of those up. And also the other problem, the main kind of problem here, is one of the little screws that kind of goes in here and screws and holds this bracket in place. It has started to round off very slightly, and I'm not going to take any risks because eventually this is going to have to come out again. So I'm going to get another screw. That's 5 pence, couple of O-rings, and then we'll put this side back together. In the meantime, I'm going to give it a bit of a clean up. So that is the gearbox, the transmission side of things, almost taken care of. Once we got those 2 little bits, we'll throw that back together. So that is done. What do you guys think so far? Would you take this on yourself? I think it's quite easy, and you know, there's quite a lot of space around this car to work. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm going to have a well-deserved coffee, and then we're going to move on to the engine side of things and actually do all the flywheel and the clutch itself. Okay, let's take a look at this side of things. Excuse the legs. This is my office for the rest of the afternoon. I'm just sat here on the stool. Plenty of space. It's really cool. So let's have a quick look at this. Well, what have we got here? We got the ring gear here on the outside. So this is the upgraded version. So in 2002, Ferrari changed the design of this to have 6 bolts, 2, 4, 6. The original ones, I believe, just had 3, and the problem with those is they sheared and they caused all kinds of problems. This thing would just literally disintegrate and peel off, and so they upgraded it to a 6 bolt pattern, Now the function of that is, if we use our starter motor here, you see the little gear on the end of that connects to that, and when you fire up your car to start with, that is how it all works. So that is our ring gear, that's going to come off. Then we've got our pressure plate here. In between this we have our clutch disc, and then we've got our flywheel. So we are going to be changing all of this today, and a few other bits behind it. Alright, let's start by removing the ring gear. So I have already loosened these off, they were not bad at all. So we've got 6 bolts, as I explained before, for those reasons. Okay, so that is our ring gear, and having a good look around it, apart from a tiny corner on 1 or 2 teeth just here, it looks very good. There you go, a little bit on that one. We're going to do the same again with our clutch pressure plate. Okay, let's take a look and see just how bad this disc is. Well, okay, so this is my disc that has done a lot of miles, and as you can see, a little bit shiny, hardly any of the grooves left on it at all on this side, and this side very similar, but there you go. That is a very well used and enjoyed clutch disc. So there we go, that's that side, that goes that way. Then we've got this, we've got a few marks on it, but that goes like that, that goes like that, and then we got the flywheel as well. And to be honest, this wasn't really slipping too badly at all. Probably like 2 or 3 times this has slipped on me. Other than that, it seemed to work quite fine. Time to get the big guns out. This is courtesy of my good man Mark at Mac Tools. Three things we're going to do in this area before we start putting all the clutch on. We are going to change the rear main seal here, we're going to change this bearing in the middle, and we're going to change this little O-ring down here. So all of them should be hopefully pretty straightforward. So first of all, let's start with the bearing. So what I've got here is a little bearing puller. Okay, so we put this bit in here, and what happens as I tighten it up, it splays this out and sits in between there. So I'm going to put a link to the kit I got. It was a few quid, I think it was about 50 quid, something like that. Just a cheapie, but it does the job. Right, let's see if I can do this without actually, let's put that over here. You guys can see that hopefully. We screw our slide hammer on the end there. There you go. Not bad. So our bearing's out. Now we're going to change the rear main seal. Okay, so we've knocked that seal out. That's good. Now I'm going to put this back on here temporarily until I get this new gasket. One thing we can do though is push our new bearing in place there. So Just going to knock that in. Lovely. Okay, so we've got a few more little bits that I've ordered up just to complete the job. Hopefully this is it now. We can throw it all back together and the clutch is done on the 360. Let me show you quickly what I've ordered up. So we've got our little tiny Cotter pin. That was 5p. I've got this little bit here. This is a little T piece. And the reason I've ordered that is when I was looking at this is the second time that thing has broken in the last 12 years of ownership. So that connects those two together and it just seems to be a weak part that gets a bit brittle. We've got our two little screws here to put the sensor back into the gearbox over there. I've got a new gasket to go on that back plate that I've taken off to get the rear main seal out, make that job easy. I've got the two little gaskets that again sit in the transmission, the gearbox, and I've also got this little gasket which I'm going to replace, which sits underneath here. While I'm in here, I may as well just replace that. That's all of the gaskets in that area done. So we're all good. We're good to start putting this thing back together. So replacement O-ring. Just popped a little bit of grease in there just to hold it in place when we push the two parts together. Okay, then it's our rear main seal, but what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to put a little bit of fresh oil around here and around the actual seal itself as well, just to help get that in nice and smoothly. What I'm going to do is find my old one, which is up there. Line that up. Okay, we're all ready to go now. Everything's in place. We've just got a bolt on the flywheel and all the clutch. And then a couple little bits more on there to do and it all goes back together. Okay, one thing I want to just say here is the flywheel can only go on in one position because the holes, one of them is slightly offset, so it won't allow you to put all 8 bolts in there. It will feel like one is going off. Now, a good tip would be to mark where your old flywheel comes off of the car. So you put a little mark on the actual crankcase and actually an alignment mark on the flywheel. The reason it is only in one position is, if I come here, you have got one single little cutout here on the square teeth at the back, and that is for your pickup points on the 2 crankshaft sensors. Okay, next we need to torque up the 8 bolts to the correct spec. Now a little handy tip, if like me you're trying to do this single-handedly, you need to be able to lock the engine rotation in order to do up the flywheel bolts to 96 Newton meters, which is quite tight indeed. So have a look at this. We need to really try and lock this flywheel in place. So all I've got is just this pry bar here and it's just wedged onto the ground into one of the teeth here, and that does the trick. Let's just show you. So I'm just doing my opposite ones here. There we go. One. Two. So that is our flywheel in place. All of the 8 bolts are torqued up correctly to factory spec. Now before I build that out a bit further with the clutch disc and put all that in place, I'm just going to give the face of that a quick clean up using some cleaner and a lint-free cloth, and just wipe off all of my greasy finger marks. Next is our clutch disc and pressure plate. We're going to put those on. Now in order to do that, it's advisable to have one of these. This is the alignment tool. Slots in there like so. We get our disc. Now that is orientated this way. So we got the big protruding part here, out, facing outwards. Slides on here, like so. And then we just put the pressure plate on the other side, and then I'm just going to get all the bolts ready and we can torque it all up. Okay, so our 15 bolts have all gone in around the side here, so 5, 10, 15, and the way I've done it is we just do a little bit at a time on the opposing ones and then gradually tighten them up just a little bit so it just goes on flush, and then finally I'm going to torque these up to correct spec. Finally, our ring gear is the same. That's going on 6 bolts, and they are also 18 Newton meters. Don't forget to take that out. Clutch side is now all done, it's ready. We're going to do the gearbox, the transmission side now, so we're just going to reassemble all of this with the new parts. I've got the extra little bolts that I've just bought this morning, and we're going to put everything in here correctly. Okay, so that's our 2 new O-rings in place, and now we're going to put the flange on. Now, I'm going to attach that on there. Okay, so we have this slightly in place, so the bearing is on the flange just a little bit. I've got my springs in place, and then all I need to do is just put these collars just in there. He says it's going to be easy, but it's not. That needs to go in there like that, sits on there, same on the other side. Screw it in a little bit, and then we're going to tighten the whole thing up. Okay, so this is all back together now. It feels amazingly good, nice and smooth, completely different to the bearing that come off. We've got the new flange on there, the bearing, the sensor, all new bolts at the back there, and it's now ready to mount back onto the engine. Okay, I have lifted it into place. We're nearly ready to go into the car. Now we need to do it so that the studs line up nicely with this, and it doesn't go on at an angle, because we don't want to, whatever we do, bend those studs. Now, it's quite heavy. Managed to get it out myself, but I'm not going to risk it. I'm going to get this done properly. So we need some muscle, which is hard to come by around here. So we're just going to have to make use with Stu. And Dexter, he's probably got more muscle. Anyway, we're going to try and get it on. I'm going to get a couple of bolts on, and then we're good to go. So I'm going to get in the car, and this is probably the most stupid thing ever, but I'm going to do it with flip-flops on. So I think if so we've got to get it up, over here, kind of try between my legs maybe. If I stand on that, like that, and that, if I lift that, hold on, I've got the heavy end. Ready? Yep. Go down on your side.
Yeah, I'm down.
Come in here.
Go on.
Wait a minute. Okay, go in that way a little bit more. That's it there. Okay. Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah. Job done. Nice. Lines up perfectly. Cheers, Stu.
No worries, mate.
He's a lot stronger than he looks. It's all gradually coming back together now. The gearbox is all in, drive shafts are in. I'm just slowly rebuilding it up. There's nothing special with this, it's just the reverse of taking it all apart. And once it's all done, I'm going to put some oil in the gearbox, in the engine, and then we're on to the next stage. Now the engine is almost back together. We've got a couple more things to put on. We've got the exhaust system, we've got the mass airflows and the throttle bodies up here, but I'm leaving them off for a second because it gives me much more access to do things like refill it with oil, do the gearbox oil, and do all our clutch and our actuator bleed. So that is what we're going to do next. The gearbox takes 4 litres, but I don't think we got all 4 out of this one. And to be honest, the car's probably done 1,000 miles since I last did the service 2 years ago, so I'm not too worried. The engine oil is much easier, the axis is right here, so the only thing with the engine oil is it needs to be checked when the engine is warm. So I'm going to put some in, and then I'm going to drive the car and just keep topping it up as necessary. Next thing we're going to do is bleed both the actuator and the clutch block, which is just down there. Now, I should have probably done that with the frame off. It would have made my life a lot easier, but there you go. I didn't think about it. Anyway, we're going to do that. In order to do that, we need my computer. So we're going to plug our dongle in to the OBD2 socket, which is down under there. Beep, beep. Go to Ferrari. I'll communicate. And then I'm going to use 430 because I know that works. System selection, and then we're going to go gearbox, special functions, and then I'm going to do actuator bleed, and then I'm going to go and open up the bleed valves. Now, it's not a great design this, because basically this side that sits flush against the side of the gearbox has the 3 bleed screws here. So what I need to do is just open those up half a turn to a turn and then fire off the computer. The other thing to do before you start is make sure your reservoir is topped right up with the correct fluid. Now, it doesn't go right the way to the top, this. It's about 3/4 because it rises as it pumps the system. You can hear that. There you go, I filled it too much, even though it was 3/4, probably about 2/3. That is just bleeding out all of the air from here, and then we shut off the valves when it finishes. It takes about a minute. And there you go, that's done. We just shut those up, and that is ready to go back on the side of the car. Gearbox, sorry. So the rain has finally stopped, and I've just bolted a few more things on the car, so we're ready now to do the clutch block bleed. So we are going to do clutch actuator bleed there, but let me just tell you a couple of things. First of all, this does use quite a bit of fluid, so just make sure you're ready to top it up. And if I come down here, I'm going to show you what we need to do. So this is my clutch block there. There is a bleed nipple on the back. I've got a pipe. Now I'm going to do it straight into a bucket just to see if I can show you exactly what goes on here. So I just need to loosen up the bleed nipple, and then I just need to go clutch actuator bleed, and then it really comes out at some pressure, some force. Okay, so just be ready, like I say, to top it up. Okay, it's good. There we go. You can see quite a bit of air in that to start with. And now, I'm just going to keep an eye on that. Just see that. Good. As you can see, we're running low down there. What you don't want to do is run out. Okay, and that's good. That's good. And then, as you can see, that is looking a little bit milky. Now finally, before we bolt on our actuator to the side of the gearbox, the transmission, we need to put some little sealant here, some gasket seal. So this is the stuff I use, Loctite 510. And there we go. You don't want to go over the top of this, just a little kind of bead around it, and that is plenty. So I'm going to bolt the actuator back on, seal it with the 7mm nuts, and then we're good to go. So we're almost done. The car is back together, just the back bumper to go on. So I'm just going to do a couple more things here. We are going to do a reset the wear index. Then I'm going to set my PIS. So current value is 4.22. I'm going to write it to 4.2. And then what we're going to do, that's a good place to start. 0.2. And then what we do is we drive the car, we feel it, and then we adjust it up very slightly until we get the right value. So the car is back together. We've turned it round. It works so far. I've done a couple more things just twice. I've run them again. That was the clutch bleed. We did the actuator one more time just because I had a few issues to start with. I've rechecked all my levels, and now it's time to take it out for a little spin. Keep those fingers crossed. Well guys, if you made it this far in the video, a big pat on the back. It's a huge one this, it's a long one, but it is done to really help out a lot of people with these kind of cars. Anyway, we're on the final leg of the journey. We're out testing the car. I'm going to do about 20 miles on it. We've got with me two things. I've got oil, we're going to pull over in a bit. The engine's up to temperature, I'm going to check the levels, top those up if need be. Then I've got the computer with me. Now we set the clutch to 4.2. I can feel a little bit of slippage in the moment, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to wind that down very slightly in increments and just continue to drive it, test it, adjust it until I find the perfect sweet spot. And that is really where the car is just biting perfectly. It's not where the car is just starting to move and creep off without you doing anything. If that is the case, you need to back it off again slightly. Anyway, we're going to do that. We're going to do that again in a few minutes' time as the clutch is kind of bedded in. I've got with me Stu in the truck in front. Not that I'm confident that the job has been done such as the clutch kit from Super Performance by using my code Ratarossa in the checkout. I hope you enjoyed it, guys. I will see you very shortly in the next one. Until then, ciao for now.